So, all of these guys are going to very briefly, 2 minutes, kind of give you their story, what they're doing in an energy-related career. And then we're going to open it up to any questions you have, and then we're going to have food arriving at the break, and then you get to talk with them more informally if you like. That's our thinking. And rather than introduce you guys all, do you want to, yeah, I'll just have you guys introduce you. Now, let me do just a little podcast. God, this is so exciting! Megan, energy advocacy. Ben, Frontlines, BNRC. Megan at BPERG. Lauren, Vermont Energy Investment Corp., doing all sorts of thoughtful things with lighting. Emma, Emma, who did the wind tour? Did you lead the wind tour?
I was there, yeah.
All right, so working for the Georgia Mountain Wind Facility. Brock, who's sort of on the cusp, he's not quite graduated, but he's done so many of these energy internship jobs, been paid, that we added him to the panel. And then Ben, who was a student in this class, it's been a couple of years.
2 years ago.
2 years ago. And has now gone on the fame and fortune at EEIC. Start with you, Megan. Take it away.
Sure. So my name is Megan. I'm the Government Reform Associate at VPERG, which is the Vermont Public Interest Research Group. It's the state's largest environmental and consumer advocacy group. We work on a whole bunch of issues, kind of in a nutshell: clean energy, toxics and environmental health, government reform, and consumer protection. So on the clean energy side, we're one of those groups that works on both sides of the table. So not only do we advocate for getting more clean energy in the state, but we advocate for getting the dirty energy out of Vermont. So I'm in the first of a 2-year fellowship. Like I said, I'm the Government Reform Associate, which means I'm generally working on our democracy issues. So that's a lot of getting more Vermonters to vote, and also getting big money out of politics. And as I'm sure you guys know, that really relates to getting more energy or clean energy in the state, because fossil fuel companies are some of the most profitable companies in the world. So the less influence that they have over our elections, the more people and clean energy we'll see in Vermont. But another big part of what I do is working to direct VPERG Summer Canvas, where we're working on our Global Warming Solutions campaign. So that is working to put a price on carbon pollution in Vermont. The basic thought behind that is we want to hold these polluting companies accountable for the pollution that we know is the driving force behind climate change, and use that to disincentivize the use of fossil fuels, but then also use that to return some money to Vermonters, and then invest in an energy independence fund to help people do the things that we know reduces our dependence on fossil fuels, like weatherizing your home, putting up solar panels, installing a cold climate heat pump. So with the canvas, I see some fellow canvassers in the room today. We basically travel all around the state, knocking on doors, talking to folks about these issues, and getting them engaged as members of VPERG. And what that really allows us to do, as a grassroots group is, kind of get that everyday Vermonters feel for these policies, and then build support, not only financial support, but getting petitions signed, and finding activists who can help us during the legislative session. So 2015 was our most successful canvassing year yet, and because this is such a big and important issue, we're probably going to be working on it again in 2016. So a little bit of how I got here. I was environmental studies and political science double major, and an English minor as well. When I was on campus, I worked as an eco-rep my sophomore year. That's the group that works to foster sustainability in the dorms. And I also was an intern and then co-director of student legal services, which gives free legal advice for UVM students. I started with VPERG in the summer of 2013 when we were working on our GMO labeling campaign. Continued with them in 2014 on the campaign to get big money out of politics in Vermont. That summer I also studied abroad in Copenhagen and Berlin, took a renewable energy systems class that was pretty incredible. As I'm sure you all know, Northern Europe is really leading the way on this, so if anybody's interested in that, I would highly recommend that study abroad program. But I think probably the most important experience that got me this job today was in my senior year. I did 3 different things. First, I took the Vermont Legislative Research Service class, which is in the Political Science Department. So that's a class that fields requests from legislators to give these brief, pretty easy to understand reports on different policies. So you're looking up like what other states have done in a certain area, or what legislative attempts have already been passed, to basically give legislators a brief report that they can share in their committees. And then I also took an intro class in that, where we toured the State House in Montpelier, talked to people all in the legislative realm about how research helps them out. So then I also interned with the Franklin Watershed Committee, which is a group in northern Vermont working to clean up Lake Champlain. There was a big water quality bill that was passed last year, so I was basically in Montpelier following that bill, which really helped me to be introduced to the State House and the legislative process. I wasn't doing much other than sitting in the room, but you can actually learn a lot from that. And then lastly, I wrote my senior thesis on Vermont's GMO labeling law. So I was interviewing lobbyists and legislators and a bunch of organizations that had worked to either support or oppose this bill. So again, those were things that got me around the policy arena, talking to these interested stakeholders, and really allowing me to go down to Montpelier and see how the legislative process works in Vermont, which just really fostered and showed me that I was in the right spot basically for policy work. So really excited to be working full-time with VPIRG and working on advocacy.
Thank you, Megan. Yeah.
Hi, so yeah, I'm Ben. You guys are terrifying, by the way, so if I don't say anything meaningful, I apologize ahead of time. So I'm an AmeriCorps member, and if you guys don't know what that is, I'll be happy to explain in a less time-consuming fashion. But I'm an AmeriCorps member. I serve with the Vermont Natural Resources Council, and I work with our energy program, which is one of 4 programs. We have water, communities, wildlife and forests, and energy. My role is the Community Energy and Climate Action Coordinator, which took me about a year to learn how to say. And I work with a network of town energy committees in Vermont. There's about 100, give or take, local energy committees, which are usually subsets of town government, like a subset of the select board, appointed by the select board. And they help write the town's energy plan to help guide the future energy development and planning for the town. They also put solar on schools, weatherize houses, look into efficiency, and my job day to day is trying to work with our partners to bring all the information around the state together to help them get those projects off the ground and get them rolling as fast as possible. So I maintain a website, I send out a newsletter. We have a conference every year in December, which all of you should definitely think about attending. It's December 5th. VCAN conference. We have about 300 or so energy committee members that show up for a full day of workshops geared toward local actions. So that's most of what I do. What was the next thing? How did I get here? So yeah, let's see. At UVM, I was wildlife biology major. Started getting really interested in energy issues sort of as I went through the Rubenstein program, just learning more about it. And my senior year, I did an independent project from NR 207, I think it was, where I worked with Representative Kurt McCormick in the State House to draft a bill restricting the emissions of leaf blowers, which didn't go anywhere, but it was really interesting. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about how busy people in policy and lawmaking are, and I met a lot of people at the State House waiting around trying to talk to him because it's really hard to get a hold of him. Learned a lot of communication skills, and did some networking, which led me to the Vermont Natural Resources Council and finding out about this AmeriCorps opportunity. I think that's it.
Thank you, Ben.
Hi everyone, my name is Lauren Morlino. I work at Vermont Energy Investment Corporation, specifically a contract that they have called Efficiency Vermont. So to give you a background, and Ben also works there, so I'm helping him out because this is a really complicated way of explaining it. But basically, Vermont Energy Investment Corporation is a overarching energy efficiency consulting company, and as opposed to like solar or wind that help produce power in a really efficient way, energy efficiency is only based on saving power before you actually use it. So Efficiency Vermont is a statewide energy efficiency utility. So it's like gas and electric, but they only focus on energy efficiency. And so I work for, this Efficiency Vermont branch of our kind of bigger company. We're right here in Burlington, off of Pine Street, which is an awesome place to work. We have a great view of the lake. Everyone we work with is super awesome too. I would definitely encourage you guys to apply. They have a bunch of internships and stuff every year, which is how I ended up there. So I'll get to that in a second. So right now I'm the commercial lighting program manager for them. So what I do is kind of provide leadership and oversee a lot of their lighting programs, but only for commercial applications. So to give you an example, if UVM wanted to update their lights, like if a light bulb went out, they would probably look to Efficiency Vermont to help them decide what kind of lights to put in and what would be the most energy efficient option. And what Efficiency Vermont does is subsidize those lights so that they're more affordable for whether it's a college student switching out light bulbs in their downtown apartment, or if it's a big university like this. And so we buy down the price of those lights because they tend to be really expensive up front. They're actually coming down in price a little bit. But LEDs are the most efficient type of light bulb. And so we particularly are looking a lot towards LEDs right now. And those are also the more expensive ones. So we try to kind of level the playing field in the market so that everyone can afford these really efficient versions of lights. And to kind of give you a general idea, if a regular kind of incandescent bulb, like one that pops up above your head, what everyone kind of views as a regular light bulb, if that were to use 100 watts, an LED of the same light output would use about 15 to 18 watts. So it's a huge, huge energy savings. And so, so pretty much I just oversee the program. We do a lot of research to figure out what that price point is for people to get them to make the behavioral change. So it's a lot of research, a lot of monitoring of sales all over the country. There's a good amount of travel involved, so that's always fun. And then how I got here, I was a political science major at UVM. I graduated in 2014. I had minors in environmental studies and Spanish. I had Amy for a class, and then Richard was also a speaker at some of my classes, a guest speaker. And they actually both helped me get my current job directly because, to kind of back up, I also did Vermont Legislative Research Service as an internship. It was a great opportunity to kind of dive right into policy in Vermont, and I actually did work on the GMO labeling law. So that was really interesting because it kind of played on both of my interests. And then after that, I worked as an intern for Efficiency Vermont between my junior and senior year of college. And I was doing research with them on advanced power strips. They're like these kind of surge protectors that help you save energy by cutting the energy to each of the sockets that are wasting energy via what we call phantom load or plug load. So I was doing research for them for that, and then continued through my senior fall semester and some of my senior spring semester as an intern. And Amy and Richard were both my advisors for that internship, and I worked with them directly to figure out how I was going to use my internship and use this great opportunity for credits. And so I used those credits towards my seminar. I reported out to them about how what I was doing was relating to energy and environmental work. And then I was hired the next year after doing a second summer as an intern. So I actually got my 1-year plaque today. And my first job at Efficiency Vermont was a market coordinator, so I was actually doing a lot of negotiation of pricing contracts for them. So manufacturers would come to me with a product and say, what can you do for us? I would buy down that price on paper, and then that price would be reflected on the shelves in Vermont stores. So yeah, overall it's just been an awesome job, and definitely like taking advantage of all the internships and extracurricular stuff that UVM has to offer was 100% how I got there.
All right, thank you, Laura.
Hi everyone, I'm Emma Allen. I work for Vera Renewables, also known as Vermont Environmental Research Associates. We are based in Waterbury, Vermont. I've been there since February of this year. I'm kind of an all-around assistant there. I do a little bit of everything. I do all the administrative work, running invoices and keeping track of the business operations and making sure that runs smoothly. I also get to work on a lot of wind and solar projects, which is great. What my company does is we are a basically pre-construction consulting firm for wind and solar projects on the large commercial scale. So we don't do residential, so yeah, that's what we do. A lot of the stuff that I do specifically is everything from property research, going from town to town, going through, finding deeds and electrical easements and everything in the town documents and bringing those back and making sure that we have proper land control. We also do permitting with the Public Service Board and Agency of Natural Resources and all that fun stuff. Everything that goes into the project up until the point of construction is basically what we do. Some of you toured the Georgia Mountain Community Wind Facility up in Milton, Vermont recently. We did have an open house on Saturday. We also do tours in the fall and spring, which I am the coordinator of. So if you have interest in visiting that facility or the Searsburg facility in southern Vermont, definitely contact me. But that project is unique in that they kept us on all the way through construction and post-construction, so we do operational monitoring for that facility on a weekly and monthly basis, just to make sure everything is running smoothly. And yeah, it's been a really unique experience in that I get to see a little bit of everything when it comes to what goes into these projects and making them happen, even as far as, working with GMP and VC and everything, interconnection points, all this stuff. So that's what I do. A little bit about how I got there. I was a community development and applied economics in that school of business. I was a community development and international studies major, minor in green building and community design. One of the great parts about CDAE particularly and all of UVM is all the awesome opportunities for service learning, and that's something I definitely took advantage of while I was here. In particular, I went to St. Lucia with Thomas DeSisto and Kevin Stapleton. Anyone else do that? It's a really great opportunity that I would highly recommend. And so when I went to my job interview for my current job, actually, I brought along a photograph from that trip and of me in front of a media camera. And it was just really funny because my boss told me like months later, I always picture you in that, I just think of that picture that you showed me all the time, and that's how I knew you could take initiative. So I think that was really cool because it was just something I decided to do on a whim. And my resume is really broad and not really specific in any sort of direction. I graduated in December of 2014, and I worked for a nonprofit to be on temporary shelter in the homeless shelters here in Burlington for a year. And so that was really cool as well. So I guess basically what I would recommend, I guess, is just taking advantage of every opportunity you can get here at UVM. Definitely scholarly travel looks great on a resume, and you can't travel for cheaper once you graduate, so definitely take advantage of that. Also, I built some really great relationships with professors while I was here. I, keep in contact with them to this day. We're Facebook friends. When something comes up, I always feel comfortable enough to be able to talk to them. So that's what I would do.
Awesome. My name is Brock Gibeon. I'm not an alumni. I'm a senior pursuing a dual degree in mathematics and economics. I apologize if I sound stuffy. It's fall, allergies, you know what I'm saying. So I guess I started, I grew up in Ithaca, New York, which is very similar to Burlington. It's very academically and environmentally focused. So, I grew up with your Peter Cashel, playing in the gorges, hiking, all that stuff. So that's, I think, what steered my studies towards the environment, and then eventually energy. So by the time junior year came around, I realized that I was just taking kind of requirements. I wasn't really kind of taking classes that would align towards a possible career in the environment or in energy. So I started with the job shadowing program. I job shadowed case manager at VEIC, and I really learned how important efficiency is. I only previously thought about just increasing renewables and transitioning our energy economy towards that, but that's where I really thought of efficiency as a huge tool. So after that, I kind of decided I didn't take a gap year. I had a twin brother who took 2 gap years. I really wanted to get my foot in the door, see what I like, see what kind of experience I could get. So I frantically applied to 30 different places, and finally hounded Renewable Energy Vermont enough for them to allow me an interview with Gabrielle. They offered me a job as a solar campaign coordinator. So for the legislative session this year, I was kind of organizing this public solar campaign to build the We Love Vermont Solar brand. Because it's very important to kind of gain this public momentum, and I think VPIRG really is a sign that that's how important it is, because they've done such great work. But so I did that. I started in mid-December, right at the end of my semester. And then once the legislative session hit, they realized that they needed a little bit more help. So I began a second role as a lobbyist during the State House, pushing for state energy policies that promoted the increase of renewables. So the biggest policy proposal that I was working on was Act 56 now, the Renewable Portfolio Standard and Energy Transformation Program that they talked about last Monday. That was huge. Early on at REV, we didn't think solar siting would be kind of that big of a deal, I guess you could say, but it definitely turned into it. So a lot of my work was talking to legislators and talking to the community and the public and giving them more information, educating them about solar and the benefits of that. So after REV, with a little bit of funding and help from them, I went to Costa Rica for 3 months in May to learn about their energy sector. Costa Rica up until now, starting January of this year, has been renewable in their electricity sector, 100%, mostly because of hydro. So I toured coast to coast, north to south. I toured wind turbines, got all the way up top. I was very scared. I toured solar plants. I toured Capitol meetings, and I just found it so very interesting. That Costa Rica kind of was more about the ideology. It's a very geographic specific model. It definitely can't work in other places, but it works for them, and they really move forward it, and they achieve something that a lot of people are striving for. After Costa Rica, supported by an Energy and Climate Public Impact Research Fellowship, it supported me to work in 2 different positions. I worked as a researcher with the Public Service Department, so analyzing, implementing, and updating this update of the Comprehensive Energy Plan that Asa talked about last Monday. And then my second role was at VPIRG. I was representing them at Public Service Board proceedings for the Act 99 net metering redesign. Net metering, just solar mostly, so we were pushing for kind of expanded and more innovative policies toward that. Then my second role at VPIRG was helping the Energy Independent Vermont campaign on H412, the carbon pollution tax. So after that, I came back to school. It was a weird change working, going back to school, but now I work on the Energy Transitions Research Team with Jenny Stevens and Richard Watts. trying to get an encyclopedia type document published about the state of energy innovations in Vermont. So that's really what got me here. I guess I would really value, you can't just apply for things that are already there. Definitely reach out to companies and ask them if they have any opportunities available. And don't be afraid to hound them. Call them a couple times. They're very busy people because Vermont is one of the most innovative places for energy and environmental policy. So really try and get them to notice you, and don't just apply for things that are posted on the Vermont Businesses for Social Responsibility, for instance. But definitely check that as well. So I think one of the best things was the job shadowing program, reaching out to places that weren't really offering things or positions, and really using, I guess I could say I use my math and economic background for a lot of data analysis in these research positions, so that really helped me. So really try and take classes that help benefit sort of a path that you want to take, and don't be afraid to take a semester off or to really work in a position that you don't really know that much about, because you'll learn what you like and what you don't like.
Thanks, Brock.
Hey guys, I'm Ben Plotzker, class of 2014, Environmental Studies. I work at Vermont Energy Investment Corporation doing technical energy analysis for our Evaluation, Measurement, and Verification Department. And one big difference in the work I do than Lauren is that I do work for Efficiency Smart, which is our energy efficiency utility in Ohio, and District of Columbia Sustainable Energy Utility down in Washington, D.C. One really big interesting part is each of those jurisdictions have very different political environments. Out in Ohio is heavy coal country, so the whole cheap generation is out there, whereas here, energy is expensive. We see efficiency as a great utility. And what I do on a typical basis is kind of energy analysis and trying to characterize energy savings on new appliances, such as heat pumps, light bulbs, faucet aerators, all these things that can do the same amount of work initially, or potentially more by using less electricity. So that's kind of the incentive for people to buy these energy efficient items. So I've been there for a year and about a third. And when I was here at UVM, I started off as a civil engineer. I had a big passion for building bridges, designing things, and what I really recognized immediately here was the environmental and political issues weren't being brought up in the engineering classes I was taking. Like calculus was very dry for me, and I really wanted to find a passion for the environment, so I changed over to environmental studies. In my sophomore year, I took Sustainable Transportation Planning with Richard, and that service learning course I worked with Karen Glittman at Vermont Energy Investment Corporation, doing alternative transportation, and we kind of focused a lot on longboarding and that kind of culture here at UVM, and how students get around. And then soon after, Richard had published his book, Public Meltdown, which is about Vermont Yankee.
You guys should all read that. That is a good book.
I kind of helped do marketing for Richard, as well as kind of meeting some kind of energy policy people in the state, as well as trying to speak with large corporations such as Entergy, which runs and is kind of decommissioning Vermont Yankee. Soon after that, I had a big interest in snowmaking, and I really followed the Sustainable Slopes Initiative here in the U.S., which is trying to reduce the amount of energy required to run a ski resort, and if anything, they're growing every single year. So I wanted to do a thesis on energy efficiency in the snowmaking world here in Vermont, specifically of Mount Snow. And I was fortunate enough that Richard was reading the thesis proposal on the bus, and his colleague Stu worked at Navigate Consulting to energy efficiency and demand-side management planning. That Richard got the card from him, gave it to me, got an interview, and I worked at Navigate Consulting for a summer doing energy efficiency planning out in Ohio, New York, and we did some work in Pennsylvania, I believe. And soon after that, I took another class with Gary Flomenhoft, who had just left CDAE a few years ago, and he taught a renewable energy course. It was another service learning course, and I worked for Al Bullis of Common Sense Energy, which was doing weatherization projects here in Chittenden County and kind of northern Vermont. So I kind of got this whole breadth of transportation efficiency, demand-side management planning, which is just trying to reduce your load in total, and then I was doing hands-on energy auditing of homes, blowing insulations into buildings. And at a certain point, I kind of realized I saw this passion for engineering that I came into school and really wanted to push the envelope and see what I could bring in. And I do a very heavy engineering type work, but I think a lot of work is you learn it on hand. So I wasn't the best calculus student, but I just kind of relearn it on the job, and you strive to do good, you will do good in the end. But VEIC is also a very large company on Vermont standards. We're about 200 employees in total, spread over 3 or 4 different offices. So we are big in the state, and we do have a lot of opportunities. So I'd recommend checking this out. But Efficiency Vermont is one of the oldest energy efficiency utilities in the U.S. So we are kind of more of a mature utility, and we kind of set the standards in the entire country as well as internationally, how we do these portfolios and try to save energy.
Very nice. All right, before we open up for your questions, we have 2 other guests that relate to this whole idea of, how would you get a job in the energy world? And, we've heard in Vermont a couple of times, these jobs are growing around the country, they're growing. But let me introduce you to 2 people. We'll start with Holly, if you want to jump up for a minute.
Hi, I'm Holly Wilkinson. I am Assistant Director of the Career Center, and I just want to let you all know that we're here, we're available. There's both the Career Center in the Living Learning Center, and then there's a Career and Experience Hub, and the difference between the two is the Career and Experience Hub is a collaboration with 8 different offices, including undergraduate research, including fellowships, food systems internships, study abroad, the Career Center. And the goal is really to get just the opportunities available. So if we have, we're open from 10 to 5 if you want help in just getting your materials together, having a good resume, figuring out a cover letter, prepping for interviews. We work with a lot of employers, and the number one thing the employers really comment is that you need to be prepared before you come in for an interview. So any of that kind of prep stuff is great. That's in the Career and Experience Hub, just kind of getting experience. Obviously, that's what you've all been talking about. And so if you need help getting experience, we also have a database of jobs and internships. We have web resources and a lot of UVM networks across the country. So we can help you with your LinkedIn profile and just helping connect you out into the community in Vermont and beyond. In the Career Center, we do one-on-one counseling. So if you want to have a conversation with someone who's not a parent and you just want to figure out your strategy and talk about your options, it's all about getting experience and then being able to articulate what you want to do. And trying things out is key. So we work with you both while you're in school, and once you graduate, we work with alumni too, particularly at different transition points. It can be helpful to just have a sounding board to think through where you want to go, what your skill sets are, and how do you articulate it effectively. And one of our career peer mentors is here, so if you ever have any questions from a peer, there you go. So, I don't know if there's time for questions, but thanks for having me.
Yeah.
And thank you.
So tremendous resource for you guys now or at some point in your college career, the Hub. That's one point of entry.
Yes, and the Career Center in Living.
Okay, so just wander to the bottom of Davis Center for the Hub. And you can go at any time, right? Some of you guys are first year, but you might want to be thinking when you're, I don't know any of this stuff.
Yeah, I think that the goal is just that while there's really clarity about what you need to do in terms of your graduation requirements, but there isn't as much clarity about what you need to do in order to get involved and gain good skills outside the classroom. And having some attention to that is what we're about.
Cool. All right, and now one other presenter, which many of you may know, is Amy Sowell from the Environmental Studies Program. How many of you guys are in the EMPSO? All right, lots of your fans here, Amy. So tell
My
them
students, and my students here, which is so wonderful. 2 of my students Megan and Ben were TAs in ENVS 1, so all of you are in ENVS 1 now. This is what it looks like through ENVS 1 and onto the stage. So I'm really excited to be here because this is the first time outside of talking with the Renewable Energy Network and Freddie there in the back, I'm getting to talk about a new program, and I'll just write the acronym up right now, but it's called the Clean Energy Internship Program. And last year, after advising lots of students in ENVS, which is where I work, it kept coming up that students were looking for clean energy internships. And many times they couldn't take these internships because they needed funding or they needed to work simultaneously and these internships weren't paid. So because the Clean Energy Fund was accepting applications from faculty as well, I put in a clean energy proposal that would fund clean energy internships starting in the summer 2016, which is the summer coming up. And I was funded, happily enough, or at least you guys were funded. I was funded to put it together, and you will all be funded for the internships. And what the Clean Energy Fund has funded is 8 internships, starting again this summer, in clean energy and energy efficiency. So this is a very big field. You just heard everything from marketing, from technical analysis, from advocacy. All of this is going to be represented in a university-wide internship program. So this will draw students in engineering, in CDAE, in environmental studies, in Rubenstein, in any unit or department on campus. And you could imagine that the range of internships will be like the range of students that we have. So some internships will be looking for young engineers. Some will be looking for students who can do marketing or have those skills. Some will be looking for students in advocacy. So we'll be putting this together. And again, there'll be 8 internships, pretty much being paid between $2,500 and $3,000 at $15 an hour for your work over the summertime, so depending on how many hours you'll be working. The timeline is being set up now, and so I spent the summer contacting hosts who were interested in having interns. So many of you have already talked about having those internships. This becomes a kind of a clearinghouse. You act as a cohort of these 8 who are in the Clean Energy Internship Program. There will be mentoring in this program. I will help with evaluation of you in the program with your mentor. And so there's a little bit more oversight in this program given the money coming from the Clean Energy Fund. And some professional mentoring that perhaps you might talk about in the Q&A about wanting to have had, but we will provide in this internship. The internship is also available for credit. So we heard that Lauren, for instance, received credit for her internships. Ben, I know, did his capstone internship in environmental studies and received credit for it. So there will also be credit bearing for these internships in clean energy. So again, the timeline was that the summer I spent organizing and contacting these hosts who wanted to host UVM interns in clean energy. Now I'm confirming those internships and figuring out the best application process for a university-wide internship program. And then very early in the new year, once everybody's back into the spring and starting the spring semester, we'll have the application process so that we're well in advance of summer and these internships will be awarded sometime in March and April. All right? So my email is amy.seidel@uvm.edu. So if you want to be in touch with me about the program, you certainly may. We'll be making this announcement, across the university once we have the host confirmed. And I'm really excited about the opportunity to pay you for your internship using funds that come from the Clean Energy Fund, which is, of course, supported by student surcharge, and getting you back into the field, or getting you into the field the way these students have confirmed its value in their academic careers and their professional lives. So thank you for that.
All right, anybody, questions or comments for any of these guys? And we'll see if it relates to one project or the other. Any questions or comments or suggestions or thoughts or critiques or, go ahead.
What is it, Maggie? I was wondering if you could expand on your Berlin Copenhagen program.
Yeah, so
Can you say that louder? I don't know.
So you asked me to expand upon my study abroad program. So I studied abroad through the Danish Institute for Study Abroad. was called. I ended up doing a summer course because I couldn't really fit it into the semester. So I did a 3-week course just called Renewable Energy Systems. So a lot of what we did, so it was based out of Copenhagen. So we spent the first week in Copenhagen and then traveled to Germany, a small town in northern Germany that I can't remember the name of, and then spent most of our time in Berlin, then came back to Copenhagen for the second week. And a lot of what we did was a lot of classroom work, but then also in the afternoons, most days we went out and did tours of different sites. So one of my favorites was to the wind turbines right in the harbor in Copenhagen. So they have a bunch right onshore and then a ton offshore as well. So I also got to climb a wind turbine, which was really amazing, just to see how it works, be up right next to them, see all the internal mechanisms. I'm obviously not into engineering, so I didn't understand any of it, but it was really cool. Another really cool one was the combined heat and power. And the way that it works is, so if you think you have like a normal, like fossil fueled combustion, you burn the fuel and it heats up the steam, which spins the turbine, is kind of the basic idea of it. And the way that this works is that it combines heating with water. So they burn their trash. So it's an incinerator with all the trash, and they burn that, and that has the heat and spins the turbine, and that sends hot water throughout the entire city. So they're not only able to have something that manages their trash, but also heats all their water. So that's a really cool system. And I actually think that they're starting to do something like that in my hometown. If anybody's from the Western New York area, Rochester, they're starting to do something like that there, which is pretty cool. And then down in Berlin, we did a similar thing where we went to, again, climbed more wind turbines. And in Berlin, it was really stunning because like everywhere you look from the top of the wind turbine, you saw so many more wind projects. And we were right in the farmers had wind turbines and solar, so they made half their income from farming and then the other half from these renewable energy projects. And so you had the solar panels with the sheep grazing right under them, all combined, and they had a really cool community model where a lot of the local community members bought in and then were getting their electricity from there and also getting money back. So,
All right, study abroad, let's just go quickly down. Do you have a study abroad experience, Ben? No? Lauren?
Yeah, I studied abroad through a program called Global Learning Semesters, and I went abroad to Cyprus. It's a small island country in the Mediterranean, and it was a multi-country program because I couldn't decide where I wanted to go abroad. So I ended up going to 14 countries in Europe and the Middle East, and I was a poli-sci major, so I was particularly learning about international relations and international relations within the European Union in particular.
Emma?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I went to St. Lucia. I think the name of the class was Sustainable Development of Small Island States. While we were there were probably about 5 different projects that were in our class. My particular project was working with the government there and doing surveys and communicating with the general public about how they felt about their new value-added tax. Not so much in the sustainable world, but we also had a group looking at mangroves down there. We had a group educating school children about HIV/AIDS. We also had a group down there. What else do we have? I don't know.
And that's a CDA-led one, so all you guys CDA, Dan Baker, I think, or
Kevin Stapleton
Kevin
and
Stapleton.
Thomas DeSisto. Would highly recommend it. It's one of the things that I always get asked about on my resume. It's one of the things that really stands out about the work that I did at UVM, and it was a beautiful country and a great experience.
Rock told us about Costa Rica. Ben?
I did not study abroad, but I highly regret.
All right, Peter, question?
Well, I was going to ask Emma about her specific service learning class. You kind of touched base on what I was curious about. I guess I'm curious now, what's the difference between that and semester abroad? I know you didn't do semester abroad. Is the class kind of more just like structured and you go with, it seems like a professor and maybe like, or just utilize it, I guess?
Yeah, there was about 20 of us in the class. It was a semester-long class, once a week for like 4 hours. And during that time, we spent all of our time prepping for our work down there. We were down there for 10 days in the beginning of January. We were actually there for New Year's Eve, which was really cool. So our entire semester, we were split up into groups. We were actually able to Skype with our community partners in St. Lucia a few times throughout the semester. We just got our project ready and learned as much about the country and the community as we could, and then we went for 10 days. I did several other service learning classes through CDAE. I also did, I wrote them down because I thought I would forget. I also did project planning and development with Dan Baker, which is where we went and took a look at all the mobile homes that were destroyed by Hurricane Irene. I also did, let's see, Dan Connor's applied research methods, where we talked about the bottled water ban that happened a few years ago. Contemporary policy issues in community development, where we learned about the phosphorus contamination in Lake Champlain, and a few other ones. So I would definitely recommend it if you could. It's kind of a nice balance if you can't commit to an entire semester abroad. It still gets you out into the community and getting your hands dirty, and it really helps you to apply what you're learning in the classroom to the real life experiences.
Good.
So.
Yeah, but one other thing I just want to point out to you guys, these are very different types of places these guys work. So as you think about your ideal job, advocacy for sort of small 5 to 10 people shops, 20, Bird,
I think we're up to 16.
16, 10-ish. Lauren and Ben work in a company that's decentralized, i.e. pods, like you each have your, but the whole company is a couple hundred people. Emma is in something really different from some of these guys in that it's a consulting firm that's hired by a developer.
Our primary client is All Earth Renewables, based in Williston, owned by David Blittersdorf, who also owns half of Georgia Mountain.
So you have, I know, 5 to 7 people, something.
6.
Brock has had a couple of different experiences, but Renewable Energy Vermont, that you guys will get to meet Thursday, Friday, it's really only 2 or 3 people, right?
Yeah. And they increased it to 3 when I was there, so it was 2 when I was there.
Yeah, so very different scale. Who's not here? Utilities. So later you're going to meet Green Mountain Power, largest energy company in Vermont, probably has 250 people maybe, 300 people. And then all sorts of other consulting type companies that work in the industry. All right, Dan had a question, yeah.
I have a question for Lauren and Ben. In particular, just looking back at your academic careers at UVM, what classes were or have proved most useful for you in terms of the work you're doing right now?
Campus sustainability. I don't know if that's a course anymore, but that was with Joya Thompson from the UVM Office of Sustainability. I worked with another girl to try to adapt the campus to incentivize people carrying a water bottle around, and also trying to visualize that it's actually not hard to fill up your water bottle on campus. So we're trying to do some strategies with that. I did environmental journalism with, I see this guy all the time running, Josh Brown, which is a little bit different, but I wrote for the Cynic and did energy environmental writing. So I thought that really helped my writing. That was, I guess, my shortfall in my major was I wasn't the best writer, but I thought that was a great course to help me out, specifically in the sustainability world.
Energy alternatives.
I never took energy alternatives.
Sustainable transportation.
Well, yeah, sustainable transportation planning was my first touch with VEIC. As I said before, I did transportation work, which is actually, it's really the elephant in the room is transportation. How do we get all these vehicles over to an electrified market? So that's a really cool market. It's definitely growing with the renewable energy portfolio. The whole getting these cars off the roads and getting electric vehicles is a big part of where the state's going and potentially the whole world. So that's a great market to look into. And other courses, renewable energy systems is a cool one. I'm not sure if that's around anymore. It was taught by Gary Flo and AJ Rossman, who's a consultant for the school. But there's a lot of great things, like Amy and Richard were great mentors, and Richard has really helped me out, so it's really about networking.
I get half, by the way, of his first year salary. Great deal for all you guys. Amy and I get you a job, we get half, right? Lauren?
I'd say, yeah, I was an ENVS minor, so about half of my ENVS credits were just like ENVS 1 and 2, which were super helpful to give you kind of a general idea of like all different types of the environment that you can go into. I didn't ever think I was going to be like a light bulb nerd, for sure. But yeah, so those were super helpful to kind of get me into the environmental door. And then I took a renewable energy seminar. It was one of the 3-hour classes at night with an adjunct professor named Dan Kirk. He was great. And that was, actually that was where Richard talked. And that was a really, really great course. And
That is this course, by the way, morphed into this.
oh yeah? Oh, great, perfect. Yeah, so that one was awesome. And then I would say my Vermont Legislative Research Service with
Gierzinski.
yeah, Gierzinski in political science was really great because even though I kind of lucked out in that I ended up doing an environmental piece of an environmental bill, you can kind of end up like, I also researched like security transaction taxes, something that was really specific, but it ends up really helping like your research skills, which is super important in any single job you would go into, and then also your writing skills too, and kind of taking a bunch of information, thinking about it objectively, and then reporting out, because it's bipartisan, so you're not really picking a side at all, you're just kind of doing straight research. So those were all really helpful for me.
Dakota?
Okay, my question is a little more general for all of you, but right now I'm undecided, so I'm wondering how many of you started off knowing that you wanted to be an energy advocate, or how many of you thought you'd be where you are today?
All right, let's go down the line, do fairly quick answers.
I was actually undecided as well when I started school, and it's a funny story, I actually took Amy's class, ENVS 1, because in the summer before I came to UVM, I found out that I tested out of math, so I was like, sweet, I get to drop calculus, that's awesome, what do I take? And I ended up taking ENVS 1, and I absolutely loved it, and declared it my major that semester, and then, you know, as we worked through the policy things, that's when I kind of picked up the political science as well.
As you might remember, I was wildlife bio, so I was like not really in the energy world at all, but something happened with my thinking as I was going through the Rubenstein program. I just sort of started feeling like there are these two halves of what's going on, sort of the like disease and the symptom, if you will, and we need people treating the symptoms, you know, managing habitat loss, fragmentation, effects on the species, effects on the environment in general, and we also need people working on sort of the root cause of that, and so I was drawn more towards that side, and yeah, somehow ended up here.
I was a political science major the whole way through. I applied as a poli-sci major, and then once I got here, started to really be attracted to like the environmental environment, more or less, of UVM, and then I really liked the social justice aspect of political science, helping everybody in the world, like NGOs and things like that, and then realized that the environment actually helping the environment actually helps everybody, so that there was a lot of social justice kind of weaved into environment. So then I picked up a ENVS minor, mostly because I didn't want to backtrack and have to drop credits or switch a major. But the nice thing about ENVS is that you can kind of go at it from a lot of different colleges within UVM. So yeah, and then I just kind of started weaving them in. I took environmental law classes and slowly started kind of making my own major in my head, even though on paper I was still a poli-sci major.
I can't see you, but I'm here. I had no idea. I'm from a small town in upstate New York, about 2 miles from the Canadian border. So I actually spent my freshman year at SUNY Oswego as a broadcasting and communications major. And I specifically remember in one of my communications classes watching a documentary about how to convince children to persuade their parents into buying them sugary cereal. And I was just like, what am I doing with my life? Like, why would I want to do that? Like, there are so many other things in this world that, you know, would better everyone else than making kids fat. So I switched to a school closer to home and one that had renewable. At the time, there wasn't really any sort of green building major, so that's why I went for the green building and community design minor. Like I said, I think switching to UVM and coming into that program was one of the best decisions I ever made. And I'm still learning what I want to do. Like, it's not, you know, just because I studied all these things in college, I'm going to graduate and that's what I'm going to do forever kind of thing, you know. So I think it's still flexible if you don't have your mind made up, but I definitely didn't know right off the bat.
I was a landscaper and horticulturist all through high school in the summers and after my senior year, so that led me to place great value in sustainable business practices, as these were green landscaping companies, so I came in as a business major. But the introductory business courses, no offense to them, didn't really hold the environment in the regard that I did growing up. So I quickly changed to an econ major and math major, and I took environmental economic policy with Donna Ramirez Harrington. It's a great class, and that's really what spurred my interest to keep on pushing towards that route.
So when I first came in, I really had no motive to be in the environmental ecological world. I was a civil engineer, and I quickly realized the environmental and political input wasn't being in the curriculum there, and I knew the environmental studies program here at the university was very sought after, and I think it's one of the oldest in the country, so therefore it was mature, and I came in and realized all these issues, climate change, energy, the new energy revolution. And then I took Lives and Livelihoods, which was kind of the intermediate course, and that kind of made me realize that what we're doing here is just helping future generations, and therefore it's more personal than really professional. It's just about doing what I could do that is helping or forwarding the agenda that I think is the right approach. So I think it's what you have a passion for and go for it, you know, no matter how hard it is. The environmental world really came close to home, so I thought that was a place to go, and here we are today.
I think just one more. Yeah.
Yeah. My question is for Ben specifically. I was just wondering if you knew of any engineering, like, specific classes that you took that you liked that had to do with energy alternatives.
Engineering-related courses. There was when I took senior year. It was who taught the class? Oh, it wasn't Logan Brown.
You know, just on that, one thing we will do, when is registration for spring?
The second week in November, first week in November.
So we did this last time. We will go try and find all the energy-related courses because they're morphing a little bit, and then make it available to you guys. So
it was a class with Mark and Pam.
With Mark, so that might, some of these courses come and go, and that might be gone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not being taught.
So I didn't take many engineering-specific courses that I actually feel.
Anybody else? One last question? Can you think of some cosmic question that these guys can run down the line on? Take us home on? Sarah?
You're just staring at me and like not calling on me.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if any of you planned on pursuing grad school in the future, and like if so, do you have any idea of like what you want to do?
I want to go to law school, so I just couldn't really handle LSATs and those things in my senior year, so I'm going to work for a couple years first and then probably go in 2017 or 2018.
I have a similar mindset. I'm sort of in the process of deciding whether I want to go to law school or not. It's a little bit scary, and there's a lot of people in the advocacy world doing amazing things without a law degree, and a lot of people even get their masters sort of on the ground, so to speak, really just serving out their time with organization. So there is that route, and it's proven, and it works in Vermont, but there's also the higher education route, and I think it's just it's tough to figure out which one is best for you, so I'm trying to talk to a lot of people that I admire about what they did.
I was talked out of law school And then went to, I actually applied for sustainable MBA schools. I really liked the sustainable business model that I saw working at VEIC. And so I applied, got in, realized I wasn't ready, and then kind of jumped into the work world with 2 feet, because a lot of the feedback I had actually gotten from schools were, specifically business schools, was that I needed more work experience. So I think that not only scared me, but also made me realize that they were probably right. So you know, I think there's definitely some value in waiting and figuring out who you are and what you want to do before you know, you spend another like $100,000 for sure.
Yeah, when I graduated, I had no intentions of going to grad school. I regrettably did not study my hardest at my time here at UVM, and so it was really just kind of on the back burner for me. However, recently, like I said, I built strong connections with some of my professors here, and I met and got coffee with one of my old professors and was like, you know, in school you're just so busy with all these things, and then, you know, if you end up at a job at a desk, you kind of feel like, well, what else am I supposed to do, sort of thing. And him and I talked about grad school, and you know, he said now might be a good time to apply since, you know, when the market crashed back in 2008, everyone was like, fine, I'll just go to grad school. And so numbers went way up, and then, you know, now they're coming back down. And so I've thought about it, still thinking about it. I definitely agree that it's, you know, a good idea to take some time off and think about what you want to do. But if it's something you do think you might want to do, I would definitely keep that in mind when it comes to your studies. I wish I had.
I definitely want to go to grad school. As I kind of got a diverse viewpoint. So REV was a nonprofit trade association, so that was more industry. The public service department was obviously a public sector job. VPIRG was nonprofit. So I'm kind of judging right now what would be the biggest impact, what would be the best impact. So whether it's a program like a JD in environmental law, or if it's a master's in public policy, or if it's a PhD in environmental engineering or natural resource economics. I'm kind of judging what would be the best impact on the environment, and that's where I really want to go.
I've thought about doing a sustainability MBA, and it's more so that my dream is to work at a craft brewery here in the U.S. And I think
You can live that dream.
pulling my energy expertise into the brewing world, I thought would be beneficial. So I thought that'd be a cool thing. But that's also a career change, so it's way off, and who knows what happens.
All right, before we give a big round of applause, I want to just recognize Freddie, who helped set this all up.